Hello everyone, and welcome back to Vellora. Take a deep breath, grab your favorite drink, and make yourself comfortable. It's time for another unforgettable story. Let's begin. The day Noah Walker disappeared, nobody noticed. Not his classmates, not his teachers, not even the girl he had loved in silence for 6 long years. Everyone believed he had simply moved away. Life continued as if he had never existed. But 15 years later, one unexpected letter would force Olivia Bennett to relive every moment she wished she could forget. The letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. It was old, slightly damaged, and carried no return address. Her name was written across the front in neat handwriting she hadn't seen in years. For a moment, she simply stared at it. Something about those letters felt painfully familiar. She slowly opened the envelope. A single folded page slipped onto the kitchen table. The first sentence made her heart stop. If this letter has reached you, it means I never found the courage to tell you these words in person. Olivia frowned. She knew that handwriting. She hadn't seen it since high school. It belonged to Noah, the quiet boy who always sat in the last row. The boy everyone forgot, including her. She continued reading. You probably don't remember the first time we spoke. I do. It was September 14th, during our first year of high school. You smiled at me because I picked up the notebook you dropped in the hallway. That smile stayed with me longer than you could ever imagine. Olivia slowly lowered the letter. The memory returned with surprising clarity. A crowded hallway. Books scattered across the floor. A shy boy handing her notebook back with trembling hands. She had smiled politely before walking away. For her, it had lasted only a few seconds. For him, it had become unforgettable. She looked out the window as rain tapped softly against the glass. How could someone remember a moment she had completely forgotten? She took a deep breath and continued reading. I wanted to tell you how I felt 100 different times. Every time I walked toward you, I convinced myself to turn around. I always believed there would be another chance tomorrow. Tomorrow. Such a simple word. Yet so many lives were built around the false promise that tomorrow was guaranteed. Olivia closed her eyes. She remembered Noah sitting alone during lunch, always reading, always quiet, never bothering anyone. Students often laughed at his old clothes. Some called him invisible. Others acted as if he didn't belong. She never joined the bullying, but she never stopped it either. She simply looked away. Back then, looking away had seemed harmless. Now, it felt like a decision she could never take back. The next paragraph was shorter, but somehow, it hurt even more. The day you cried outside the library because your father lost his job, you thought nobody saw you. I did. I wanted to walk over and tell you everything would be okay. Instead, I stood there like a coward. Olivia's hands began to shake. Nobody had known about that day. She had hidden behind the old library building for nearly an hour. Or at least, she had believed she was alone. The rain outside grew heavier. The silence inside the house became unbearable. She continued. People always said I was too quiet. The truth is, I wasn't quiet because I had nothing to say. I was quiet because I spent my whole life believing nobody wanted to hear my voice. Olivia swallowed hard. For the first time, she wondered how many people she had walked past without ever seeing them. Not because they were invisible, but because she had been too busy looking somewhere else. She reached the bottom of the page. There was one final sentence. A sentence that made her stand up so quickly the chair fell behind her. By the time you read this, I'll already be gone. She stared at those words. Gone. What did he mean? Had he left the country? Had he disappeared? Or did he mean something else entirely? Without wasting another second, Olivia grabbed her keys, the letter, and her coat. She needed answers. She needed to find Noah Walker, even if it meant reopening every memory she had spent years trying to forget. She had no idea that this search would uncover a truth far more painful than the letter itself. Olivia drove through the rain without knowing exactly where she was going. The only thing on her mind was Noah's last sentence. By the time you read this, I'll already be gone. Those words echoed inside her head over and over again. She couldn't believe that someone she barely remembered had spent years remembering her. The first place she visited was their old high school. Very little had changed. The red brick building still stood proudly behind the iron gate. The basketball court looked smaller than she remembered. Even the old oak tree near the entrance was still there. She walked slowly across the empty courtyard, each step bringing back another forgotten memory. For the first time, she noticed how quiet the place really was. Maybe it had always been quiet. Maybe she had simply never listened. Inside the administration office, an elderly receptionist looked up with a warm smile. "Can I help you?" Olivia hesitated before asking the question. "I'm looking for information about someone who studied here years ago. His name was Noah Walker." The receptionist's smile faded. She lowered her eyes for a moment before speaking. "I remember Noah." There was something in her voice that immediately made Olivia nervous. "He was one of the kindest students we ever had." Olivia leaned forward. "Do you know where he is now?" The woman stayed silent for several seconds. Then she opened an old cabinet and removed a dusty yearbook. She placed it gently on the desk. There weren't many students who signed Noah's yearbook. Olivia opened it. Most pages were almost empty. No funny messages. No inside jokes. No promises to stay in touch. Only one sentence, written by a teacher. "Never let the world convince you that kindness is weakness." Olivia slowly turned another page. A small folded photograph slipped onto the floor. She picked it up. It showed Noah sitting alone beneath the old oak tree, reading a book while everyone else laughed together in the background. Someone had taken the picture without him noticing. For the first time, Olivia truly saw him, not as the quiet boy in the last row, but as someone who had spent years watching life happen around him, without ever becoming part of it. The receptionist spoke softly. "He came back here once." Olivia looked up immediately. "When?" "About 3 years after graduation." "What did he want?" "He donated money." Olivia blinked in surprise. "Money?" The woman nodded. "He asked us to create scholarships for students who couldn't afford school supplies." Olivia frowned. "I thought he had nothing." "So did everyone else." The receptionist smiled sadly. "Noah never talked about himself. He only asked one question before he left." Olivia held her breath. "He asked if you had ever come back." The room suddenly felt colder. Olivia looked down at the photograph again. He had returned. Not to see the school. Not to meet old teachers. He had come hoping to hear her name. The receptionist opened a drawer and handed Olivia a small notebook. "He left this with me," he said. "If Olivia ever comes looking for me, please give her this." Olivia could barely move. Her fingers trembled as she accepted the notebook. The cover was worn and faded. Inside, every page contained short thoughts, small observations, dreams he had never shared with anyone. One entry caught her attention immediately. Today she smiled again. That was all it said. No date, no explanation, just one sentence. She turned another page. Some people don't realize they're saving someone simply by being kind for a few seconds. Another page. I wonder if she'll remember me when we're old. Olivia stopped reading. Tears blurred the words. She couldn't understand how someone had cared so deeply, without asking for anything in return. Near the end of the notebook, she found a newspaper clipping. It showed a modern children's hospital. The headline read, "Young businessman donates $10 million to build children's cancer center." There was no photograph, only one name, Noah Walker. Olivia stared at it in disbelief. The quiet boy everyone ignored had become a millionaire, not because he chased fame, but because he had quietly built one of the most successful software companies in the country. And no one from school had ever known, not even her. Folded inside the newspaper clipping was another envelope. This one was sealed. Across the front, only 5 words had been written. Please read this last. Olivia held the envelope against her chest. Something told her, whatever was inside would change everything. Olivia sat in her car for nearly 20 minutes, staring at the sealed envelope resting on the passenger seat. The rain had finally stopped. The streets were quiet. She reached for the envelope more than once, but each time, she pulled her hand back. Something inside told her that once she opened it, there would be no turning back. Finally, she broke the seal. A single letter slid into her lap. The handwriting was unmistakably Noah's. It began simply, "If you've opened this letter, then you chose to look for me instead of forgetting me again. Thank you." Olivia closed her eyes. The word again hit harder than anything else. She kept reading. "There are many things I wanted to tell you. Not because I expected you to love me, but because everyone deserves to know the truth about the lives they unknowingly change." She whispered, "What truth?" The answer came only a few lines later. "You once saved my life." Olivia frowned. She couldn't remember anything like that. Noah explained. During their final year of high school, he had decided he was done with everything. Years of loneliness, years of feeling invisible, years of believing nobody would ever notice if he disappeared. He had climbed onto the old railway bridge just outside town. He stood there for almost an hour. Then, his phone vibrated. It was a message, not from a close friend, not from family, from Olivia. She hadn't even meant to send it to him. She had created a class group message reminding everyone about the history exam. At the end, she accidentally added one extra sentence. "Good luck tomorrow, everyone. We can do this." To Olivia, it was nothing. To Noah, it was the first encouraging message anyone had sent him in months. He stepped away from the bridge, went home, and decided to live one more day. One more day became another, then another, until life slowly began to change. Olivia covered her mouth. She had never known, never imagined that 12 ordinary words had kept someone alive. Tears rolled silently down her face. The letter continued. People always believe they need grand gestures to change someone's life. They don't. Sometimes kindness is so small that the person giving it forgets it, while the person receiving it remembers it forever. The words stayed with her long after she reached the end of the page. But there was something else inside the envelope. A business card. On the back, an address. No explanation. Only one sentence. "If you truly want answers, come here." The address led her to a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even a large house. It was a small building surrounded by flowers. Above the entrance hung a wooden sign, "The Walker Foundation." Children ran across the garden laughing. Volunteers carried boxes of books into the building. A young nurse smiled as Olivia entered. "Can I help you?" Olivia held up the letter. "I'm looking for Noah Walker." The nurse looked at the handwriting and smiled softly. "So, you're Olivia." Olivia froze. "You know my name?" "He talked about you." Her heartbeat quickened. "Where is he?" The nurse didn't answer immediately. Instead, she invited Olivia into a small office. On the wall hung dozens of photographs. Children ringing hospital bells after beating cancer. Families smiling. Scholarship students holding graduation certificates. Homeless people receiving warm meals. Every photograph carried the same small signature. Donated by Noah Walker. Olivia looked around in disbelief. The quiet boy who had eaten lunch alone had quietly changed thousands of lives. Without interviews, without fame, without asking for recognition. The nurse finally broke the silence. "You should know something." Olivia turned toward her. "Noah never built this foundation because he became rich." She frowned. "Then why?" The nurse smiled. "Because he knew exactly what it felt like to have nobody believe in you." She opened a drawer and removed an old notebook. This was his first journal after college. Olivia carefully opened it. The first page contained only one sentence. "If I ever become successful, I'll make sure no child grows up believing they're invisible." Olivia couldn't stop crying. 4 years. She had believed Noah's story was about loving someone who never loved him back. Now she realized it had never been about heartbreak. It had been about hope. Hope that no one else would feel as alone as he once had. Then the nurse took a deep breath. "There is one last thing you should see." She opened another door. At the end of a quiet hallway, a familiar face smiled from a large black and white portrait. Fresh white lilies rested beneath it. Olivia stopped walking. Her legs suddenly felt too weak to move. The small silver plaque below the photograph read, "Noah Walker, 1996 to 2025. For a long moment, the world around her disappeared. The boy who had once believed nobody would remember him had left behind a legacy that thousands would never forget. And yet, Olivia could think of only one thing. She had come looking for him, just a little too late. Olivia stood in front of Noah's portrait for what felt like hours. The building around her was alive with laughter. Children were running through the hallway, volunteers were carrying books from one room to another, and parents were smiling with relief after hearing good news from doctors. Life was everywhere. Yet all Olivia could see was the young man whose smile had been hidden from the world for so many years. The nurse quietly walked beside her and handed her one final envelope. "This is the last thing Noah asked us to give you." Olivia looked down at the envelope. Unlike the others, this one wasn't sealed. Almost as if Noah had wanted her to read it without fear. She unfolded the paper. The first sentence immediately filled her eyes with tears. "Please don't cry for me." She continued reading. "If you're standing here, then you've already learned the truth. Yes, my journey ended sooner than I expected. But if you're wondering whether I left this world feeling lonely, the answer is no." Olivia took a deep breath. The letter continued. "For years, I believed being invisible meant I had no value. I was wrong. Sometimes the quietest people are simply waiting for someone to notice them. I stopped waiting. Instead, I decided to become the person I had always needed." She slowly lowered the page. Every photograph on the wall suddenly carried a different meaning. Every child smiling. Every family reunited. Every scholarship. Every meal, every act of kindness. It was Noah's way of telling the world, "I see you." She continued reading. "There is something I've never told anyone." Her heart began to race. "When I built this foundation, I didn't name it after myself because I wanted to be remembered. I named it Walker because I wanted every lonely person who walked through these doors to leave believing they mattered." Olivia smiled through her tears. For the first time since opening that very first letter, she smiled. Then she reached the final paragraph. "You once asked the class what success looked like. Everyone talked about money, expensive cars, and big houses. I never answered. I was too shy. Today, I finally have my answer." She stopped breathing as she read the final lines. "Success is leaving behind a world that's kinder than the one you were born into." Below those words, there was only one final request. "Don't spend the rest of your life wishing you had known me better. Spend it noticing the people everyone else ignores." The letter ended with two simple words. "Thank you." Nothing more. No dramatic goodbye. No confession. Just gratitude. Olivia carefully folded the letter and held it against her heart. She understood something she had never understood before. Noah had never expected her to love him. He had simply hoped that one day she would truly see him. And finally, she did. Months passed. Instead of returning to her old routine, Olivia made a decision that surprised everyone. She left her high-paying corporate job. She joined the Walker Foundation as a volunteer. At first, she served meals. Then she organized scholarships. Later, she began visiting schools, speaking to students about loneliness, kindness, and the power of simple words. Whenever someone thanked her, she smiled and quietly replied, "I'm only continuing someone else's work." One autumn afternoon, a shy teenage boy sat alone outside the foundation. His backpack was torn. His clothes were old. Everyone walked past him. Olivia almost did the same. Then she remembered Noah's final request. She turned around, walked over, sat beside him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then she smiled and gently asked, "Would you like to come inside? We just made hot chocolate." The boy looked at her with surprised eyes. Then, he smiled. Years later, that same boy graduated from medical school. During his speech, he told the audience that one simple invitation had changed the direction of his entire life. Olivia stood in the crowd, tears filling her eyes. She didn't think about herself. She thought about Noah. She finally understood what he had been trying to teach her. Kindness doesn't always make headlines. It doesn't always receive applause. Sometimes, it begins with a smile, a sentence, a letter, or a quiet person who was only waiting for someone to notice. As Olivia walked out of the auditorium that evening, she looked up at the sky. The sunset painted the clouds in soft shades of gold. She smiled and whispered, "You were never invisible, Noah. The world just needed more time to see your light." And somehow, the silence felt like an answer.